language exam? Actually, that's a lie, because that's not even question number 1 from the 2016 AP English language exam.
I feel like if I wanted to talk about it, I would have took the class.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. Appreciate it. All right, logical fallacy. Essentially what it is it's a flaw in the logical structure of an argument. So essentially, as really Jonah was saying, it's pretty much an error in reasoning. The things don't connect. You got two things here that don't really link up. The problem with most logical fallacies is for us as the person who's making the statement, it makes total sense. So if you are saying something that you are convinced about, you're not really going to go, there could be an error in the logic or the reasoning here because this may not make sense. In your mind, it's a perfect fit. Everything ties together. But for someone who is looking at it objectively, they recognize, no, you got a flaw, you got a gap. There's a hole, kind of in the argument. What would you do if you recognize that someone is using a logical fallacy? Leah wants to do another smart debate, and she's recognizing that her opponent is using a logical fallacy. She would be silly not to call them out, point it out. Be like, Sophia is using logical fallacies. Her argument does not make sense, and here's why. She's going, straw man, slippery slope, and all that kind of stuff. That's certainly going to hurt the ethos, the credibility of the other speaker. However, when could you use logical fallacies to your benefit?
When you're using it as a deterrent, this side may say this, but it's a logical fallacy.
So still identifying.
Yeah.
When would, and you're correct with that, when could you use in your argument, knowingly, use a logical fallacy? So you, as the arguer, understand this doesn't really work, but I'm going to do it anyway. Simple answer would be, if you don't think your opponent paying attention, I don't want to say smart enough, but aware enough to understand what's going on, because logical fallacy is going to be really tricky. So most of the things that we're going to go on here is going to be like, you don't want to do this, because we assume that Adele's going to be able to identify it and point it out. But if Zelena's getting in an argument with a person who she's pretty confident isn't going to understand this logical fallacy, hey, go ahead and use it. It might be to your benefit. If you were to knowingly use a logical fallacy in here, it's a risk, and Rebecca might decide to do that, but simply understand that the opponent could, call you out on it. Keller might go, hey, wait a minute, no. And this is why that's non sequitur. You can't state something like that. So it's a little bit of a risk reward, but to say that you will never use them or you never would want to use them, I think would be fairly limited. Most of the time, they're unintentional, but sometimes you can certainly use it to your benefit. The first one on here is pretty general. In English classes, you tend to talk about figurative language a lot, simile and metaphor and personification and all that kind of stuff, hyperbole. Non sequitur is pretty much like saying figurative language. There's then specific things that fall under it, but it's just a general term. It's a Latin term. Josh, you take Latin?
I used to.
What, 9th grade? Yep. You didn't take it 10th grade? Nope. Well, we'll still call on you for all the Latin stuff. Josh, what does non sequitur mean?
It does not follow.
Good job. You picked up on that. I appreciate that. So literally means it does not follow. It's an argument in which the conclusion does not logically follow the premise. Okay? So it's an argument where the closing idea doesn't match up with how things were set up. I'll be honest, you folks tend to do this quite a lot. Morgan, you have a job?
Yeah.
Good for you. Where do you work? It's going to start getting busy.
Yeah, I know.
Rides, pumpkin patch. What's your job?
I work in the bakery, the deli, and then the food barn during the festival.
So you don't have to do petting zoo and all that kind
No,
of stuff.
thank
You dodge that bullet. Okay, good for you. How long have you been
Yeah,
working?
that would be fun.
How long have you been working there?
Like a year and a half.
All right. So you got some sweat and equity built into this place. How much do you make? You want to keep that information private? Okay, that's understandable. I'm not going to pressure.
Like $6. I actually it's more than $6. It's more than minimum wage, so that's good.
That's good.
I'm in.
What's bad about being a senior?
You're 18.
Hopefully.
And so then they have to, like, technically when
Senior
you're 18,
year
you're
is the
supposed to
most
pay your own
expensive
bills.
year of your life.
What's,
Okay. We're gonna get Rebecca started.
no,
So, there's like college applications, let alone like senior pictures, prom stuff is gonna be going on later, the bills are just gonna keep piling up. So you're gonna continue your job. Senior year, what's Morgan going to say to, is it Mr. and Mrs. Sorrell? I don't know, who's your boss?
Give me a
Yeah.
raise.
I know people who work, I know the Cheneaux, I don't know the Sorrells, so I can't help you out there. What's she gonna do next year? She's gonna ask for a raise. Why do you need more money? Why do you need more money, Morgan? Well, because this is an expensive year for me, boss, and you're running through all the things that she's going to have to pay. What is the boss's reaction going to be? That's too bad for you. Her conclusion doesn't fit the premise. I need more money. In her mind, why does she need more money? Because it's an expensive year, so what do? I ask for it. What would be a better approach to asking for a raise? I've been working here at this point for 2.5 years. I do, the things that I do well.
That's what I was.
I train other people. I've been loyal to you. The other farms have asked me to come by and work, but I say no. I stay right here. I'm willing to scoop the roof in the petting zoo and all that kind of stuff. I'll do whatever is necessary. I should have a raise. At that point, you start building up logical reasons as to why you should have it. But if there's something that you need and you know it requires money, and you go to the source that gives you money, and you simply go, since I'm going to the Bahamas for vacation, I wouldn't do that now. I need more money, and you ask your boss for it, that's not going to work.
That's what I did.
How's the three-point shot coming along? There's going to be a lot of them this year. I mean, offense is different. Lexi needs a new pair of shoes. Why does she need a new pair of shoes? Because it's going to improve her shot. Is it really going to improve her shot? Absolutely not. But in her mind, and this could even kind of be like a superstition in a way, you do things because you assume it will help you, lead to whatever conclusion you're looking for, but there's really no connection between those things. So a non sequitur can be tricky because in your mind there is a connection between the conclusion and the argument, but they really don't match up. I mean, number 2 is a number. Number 1 is a number. Those are true statements, but number 2 does not equal number 1. Try that next period and see how it goes, but I'm pretty sure that one will end up getting marked wrong. She was doing a lot of and she was looking over tests yesterday.
Really?
I didn't look at
Was
names.
it the quizzes?
I
I failed my quiz yesterday.
I don't know. Well, then maybe it was yours. She was taking a look at. Straw man. Straw man. Misrepresenting someone's argument to make it easier to attack. You misrepresent someone's argument to make it easier to attack. Oops. Sophie, you gave that one like a little head turn, like,
Well, is that like straw man? Just a little bit confused by the name.
How it gets the name. I'm going to just make your eyes go crazy. After Will said that we should put more money into health and education, Warren responded by saying that he was surprised that Will hates our country so much that he wants to leave it defenseless by cutting military spending. You can tell they're Canadian the way they spell defenseless. It's a Canadian spelling.
Yeah. Like,
Great
don't they spell color with a U?
Canadian. I don't know.
My
They're just,
favorite.
anyone in here Canadian?
I'm Canadian cousins.
They're just weird
I
people.
know Canadian. They talk weird. There was a whole story.
Like, here's what I don't understand.
Hey?
They're Canadians, right? So, why is the country called Canadian?
We're American.
Why can't they just mix up United States?
Like when I was in high school, I think it was junior year, Quebec did a vote as to whether or not they should leave Canada. And the option was then they might become part of the U.S., but they voted it down. They did not.
There was
Which is good. We don't need French,
I want bacon.
Canadians.
the vote was like 52-48.
It was dangerously close.
Yeah.
Josh, you see what's happening here?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Will wants more money into the health and education, and Warren thinks Will hates our country because.
Thank you for restating it.
Yeah.
Anyone?
That's what happened. That's what's happening.
What's Warren doing
He's going
with his
to
argument?
He's using a straw man.
So what is the misrepresentation? Good job at using absolutely no valid answers whatsoever. What's the misrepresentation that Warren is doing? Why does, so number one, does Will say anything that would be, clear that I dislike the country, that I want to cut spending from the military or anything like that? Okay, he does not say that. But what Warren does is, and I don't want to make it sound like Warren is correct, but why could this actually be something that would end up happening?
You have to cut spending somewhere to put money into something else.
Unless you're going to raise taxes, and generally that doesn't work out well. What is for just about all countries, what part of the budget is the largest chunk? Military, defense. So if we're going to reshuffle funds, we're going to put more money into, education, health, whatever kind of social programs you want to look at, the chances are that the cut is going to happen from military is pretty likely. So what Warren does is actually pretty sneaky, in the sense that if you're going to put more money into health and education, fine, but it's going to have to come from military spending. We're going to be defenseless. I don't understand why you dislike our country so much that you want to leave us hopeless and defenseless like that. But if that's what you want to do, go for it. Actually can be a fairly effective kind of thing, but Sophia would go, you're misrepresenting my argument, that's a straw man fallacy, you can't do that because I never said that's what I actually want to have. Not that it was a straw man, but this is kind of like the video that we watched with Colbert. How would you cut spending? Social. Doesn't say that, but he puts himself in a position where you can kind of have that attack. The best thing for Will to do would be what? To prevent this from happening. Where are those funds going to come from? So if part of his argument, Will says, we're going to put more money, here's how we're going to get that money, that would take, I don't want to say completely take that option away, but it would certainly limit the damage that Warren would be able to do. So for a straw man, you misrepresent someone's argument. Tomorrow, I give you an essay assignment that's going to be due Monday. Taylor slams her paper down and goes, I don't know why you hate me so much. That would be a straw man. It's misrepresenting what is happening. We'll find out tomorrow.
Oh my god.
The House Education Committee, this was Louisiana. The House Education Committee approved 9-5, so a vote of 9-5, the resolution that says the legislature does, quote, reject the core concepts of Darwinist ideology that certain races and classes of humans are inherently superior to others, and does hereby condemn the extent to which these philosophies have been used to justify and approve racist practices. The resolution moves next to the full House for debate. The context of this is there was debate going on in Louisiana, this is from like 10, 15 years ago, as to whether or not evolution should be taught in schools. And so one of the arguments as to why evolution should not be taught in schools was this thing here, that they are rejecting the core concepts of Darwinist ideology that certain races and classes of humans are inherently superior. This one's a little bit tricky. Anyone see what the straw man would be? Because you kind of have to be a little familiar with the lingo too. what is it about what is in quotes up here that would be the straw man? So this is dealing with teaching evolution in schools.
Evolution's like the survival of the fittest, so it can be like taken to be instead of like survival of the fittest, like that, like the fittest is the superior like race rather than like who survive.
Okay.
Making it into like more of a race thing more than like a scientific standpoint.
So what's the scope of like Darwin's study? Like what's he really looking at?
Like the growth and evolution of people, how far they've come, what they've come from.
Okay, and so he's specifically looking at animals. You know, so you're doing survival of the fittest. What it gets twisted into is okay, now, you know, this is arguing that certain people are more fit than other people, but you're looking at evolution over years and years and years. You're not looking at groups of people that are coexisting, you know, within the same society. So there will be social Darwinists that will kind of sometimes argue, you know, more of the racist concepts, but that has nothing to do with Darwin's scientific study of animals adapting to environments. So what's happening is his research or his study is being misrepresented, that it is taking a look at how races would compare in today's world, which is not what he's looking at all. And so depending upon how things get presented, that's where misrepresentation kind of happens. Think of the telephone game, you know, that you play in kindergarten. So Lucas is going to whisper something into Josh's ear. By the time it gets all the way down to Josh over here, what's happened? It's different because it has been, not purposely, but it's been misrepresented. And so the more sometimes people that you get involved with an issue, that's where changes and tweaks can happen.
Can't you just like call anyone out and say like your argument makes no sense? Like or like say like can't you misinterpret anything they say if you have a reason behind it?
I mean,
So does it not always work?
you mean like is the danger always there to misinterpret something?
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, you could, but there's a difference between misinterpreting something and then misrepresenting it. So if you, and the idea with straw man is generally this is going to be one that the person does on purpose to make the opponent look weaker, that you'll take something and you're twisting their words so it sounds worse than it did before. So it's almost in some ways kind of like gossip. You know, did you hear what she said? Did you hear what he said? And then you kind of exaggerate it and it gets twisted. That's what's happening here. Yes, you certainly could misinterpret someone. If you misinterpret and you misrepresent, then they're going to go, well, that's not what I meant by it, at which point it could kind of harm you. You know, that's why you want to make sure you're always kind of paying attention to what you're saying so that you don't get misinterpreted. And more often than not, you're going to be debating an issue against someone that you're going to be knowledgeable about as well. So it would at least kind of lessen those chances of misinterpretation. You know, if you don't, if science isn't your thing, you're not going to get an evolution debate. Or if you do, shame on you for getting in an evolution debate when science isn't your thing. But you know, when Mr. Franks gives you that negative 37% and you blow up on him and go, you know, why do you think I'm the worst human being ever? He didn't say that. He just gave you a negative 37% and you took it that way. But he didn't say that. He would never self-incriminate himself like that. Josh, Latin.
Reduced to the absurd.
Good. Boy, it's like,
Right?
I feel like I should call up Mr. Zebley. Is Mr. Zebley your 9th grade Latin teacher? Yep. If I were to say the name Josh Dreyer, what's his first word out of his mouth going to be?
No. Tis a pleasure.
I appreciate your honesty. What it means here is you are reducing to the absurd. So this is when an argument is, I can't get the right, there we go, is reduced to an absurd conclusion and attempt to prove that the argument is therefore untrue. So you are reducing an argument to such an absurd conclusion in an attempt to prove that the argument is not true. Got a couple examples that we'll take a look at here. Why would he be disappointed in you? Okay.
Oh,
What?
you're one of those like like the untapped potential was there, but you did enough to get by. Yeah. Mm.
I mean, my brother, who like having like before, probably 110% of the time.
So great things were expected. This would be a false analogy, which we'll get into later. Yeah. Oop, sorry. So there's the term. And then
What's your least favorite food?
ah, I know it's moving on me funny.
Why is it that we use so many words in Latin which represent a whole concept?
Well, like to the first come the spoils. So in a lot of ways, these are terms that were coined when Latin was still like universal language, and it just kind of always stays that way. So you know, the first person, first person or first group of people to coin something, you kind of get first dibs on it. And really, like for our purposes, English language, we don't really come up with anything. We can steal stuff, and we're very bad at it because like we steal stuff from so many places that then it doesn't make sense. So that's why we have German words and French words and Gaelic words and Latin words. But you know what? We are better than Canadians. I don't know. I just have something against Canada. I don't know.
I speak French and English. Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I'm
Canadian.
American. No, you think every single Canadian is fluent in French and the ones I know.
I would not write this example down because it's going to certainly obviously get long-winded, but at least kind of see what's going on. But humans believe the gods to be born and to have their own clothes, voice, and human form. All right, so this is coming from Greece here. Humans believe the gods to be born and to have their own clothes, voice, and human form. So when you think of Zeus, when you think of Apollo, you think of like human-looking beings and all that kind of stuff. But if oxen, horses, and lions could have hands, or could draw with his hands and complete works as man's, then horses and oxen could draw pictures of gods like horses and oxen, and they would make the body in such a fashion as each possesses. What's happening?
It's making you think that, like, horses and oxen could be gods just as much as humans.
And Clement of Alexandria is actually... Yeah, no, you're good. Clement of Alexandria is actually a Christian saint. Okay, he's been, in sainthood. So what is he doing here? He's explaining that those pagan gods cannot exist because they are created by humans. If animals could create things, they would create gods to look like themselves too. So if a pig would create a god to look like a pig, who's to say a human would create a god that's going to look like a human, that would be any more valid than a goat having a goat god?
They might.
So what is he doing? He's reducing it to an absurd conclusion. This can't be real because if my cat believed in it, then he would create its own cat god, feline god. We should take a look at some Egyptian gods, they certainly were. So you're saying something is untrue by reducing it to an absurd conclusion. Probably one of my least favorite comic strips, but hey, it works for our purposes. Dilbert. Poor Wally's getting fired. We ranked all the engineers from best to worst. We plan to get rid of the bottom 10%, which includes Wally. Okay? So if you're in that bottom 10%, we're taking you out. We could do that in here. Wally's going, but your plan's logically flawed. If you fire the bottom 10%, you'll still have a bottom 10%. You'll fire and fire, but there'll always be a bottom 10% until finally, when less than 10 people are left, you'll have to fire body parts instead of whole people. We'll have torsos and glands wandering around, unable to use keyboards, blood and bile everywhere. So if we were to get rid of the bottom 10% in here, what would happen? By 1.6 individuals. So, you know, we could easily get rid of, I mean, you're already left. Alright, so she's gone. So now we gotta get rid of 0.6 of someone else.
Just come a little.
That would be like 0.15, so we'll need like some more legs and arms from other people.
You can put the legs in the hallway.
So what's happening is, again, you're reducing this, that we shouldn't get rid of the bottom 10% because it's going to lead to the point at which there's going to be mutilation and all that kind of stuff taking place. It doesn't mean that the argument is not untrue, but the way in which you're presenting it, it is becoming pretty much absurd. We'll see. We'll try to play the clip. Sound wasn't working. See what happens. Nothing like watching Sheldon with Spanish subtitles. Hey!
Do you mind if I stay here tonight?
No, yeah, take the couch. Or my bed. I just got new pillows, hypoallergenics.
The couch is good.
Hold that thought, Leonard, a moment.
Let me guess, you have a problem with this.
Where do I begin?
It's up to you. Crazy person's choice.
Well, first, we don't have house guests. Frankly, if I could afford the rent, I'd ask you to leave.
Your friendship means a lot to me as well. What else?
Well, our earthquake supplies. We have a 2-man, 2-day kit.
So?
So, if there is an earthquake and the 3 of us are trapped here, we could be out of food by tomorrow afternoon.
I'm sorry, are you suggesting that if we let Penny stay, we might succumb to cannibalism?
No one ever thinks it'll happen until it does.
Penny, if you promise not to chew the flesh off our bones while we sleep, you can stay.
What?
He's engaging in reductio ad absurdum. It's the logical fallacy of extending someone's argument to ridiculous proportions and then criticizing the result, and I do not appreciate it.
I'll get you a blanket and a pillow.
You don't have to worry about writing this one down because it's all visual, but it is like, it's a true one. Now, it's not something that would really work for us because rarely does visual things tend to happen. But, and really, this started post-World War II, Cold War era, when you get a lot of propaganda. The term still gets used, but it's not necessarily always Hitler. But what are you doing? What's happening with each one? You're taking an image and you are manipulating it so that each one, so we have President Trump, President Obama, President Bush, President Clinton, that you are basically creating a parallel to some type of evil character or person you wouldn't want. And that still goes on today. It'll pick different leaders and whatnot, but it's more of a propaganda type thing that gets done so that when you see an image, you're automatically now associating that person with someone who would clearly be undesirable. No.
Yeah, he took time to do that.
All right, anecdotal. This will be our last one for today. Anecdotal. Mrs. Burns heard me say diddles, and she thought it was the greatest thing in the world. She just was laughing hysterically, I think, for the whole time while poor Virginia was taking her essay. And then she did classic Mrs. Burns. Can you say that again? And then she started doing her laugh, and when she laughs, like her hands always. Yeah. This can be a dangerous one that I think is easy for us to use when you take a personal experience or an isolated example instead of a valid argument and you use that to dismiss something, especially statistics. So Jason said that was all cool and everything, but his grandfather smoked like 30 cigarettes a day and he lived until 97. So don't believe everything you read about meta-analysis of sound studies showing proven causal relationships between smoking and lung cancer. If you remember the first set of notes that we did with the intro to rhetoric, we did the video of Mad Men where it was the ad agency and the cigarette company was worried, how are we going to still be able to advertise and sell cigarettes if it's going to get the Surgeon General's warning and all that stuff on it. And the son, when my granddaddy smoked it, lived to be 95. Anyone remember how he died? No? Got hit by a truck.
So smoked cigarettes every day, lived to be 95, and that didn't even kill him. If you take an isolated example and you use that to dismiss a valid argument, that's when it's anecdotal. Now, if you have a personal example that actually ties into something that is credible and valid, it certainly can still work. But you don't want to use a one-time example to completely dismiss what would otherwise be valid.
So if you smoke cigarettes, you're gonna get hit by a truck.
That would be a false causal relationship that would be taking place there. You live to be 95. At some point, you're going to get hit by a truck.
Yep.
That's probably. I wonder what you got a greater risk of. Getting hit by a truck or dying of like lung cancer by the time
Do you know
you're
the risk
over 90.
of getting struck by lightning and my friend's neighbor got struck by lightning 2 separate times before the damage.
So it's bound to get that kind of work.
So he's very unlucky.
So Toolman model quiz tomorrow. That'll be where we start.
With the math testing.
She did?
Got an A on chapter 8.
Well done.